On the blue and black side of Milan, a giant is rising once again. Ambitious, unique, and unconventional. If there are those who claim that victories without repetition are merely luck, then someone should also give credit to the team that has reached the Champions League final for the second time in 3 years. Because this story doesn't feature the world's most expensive players or a charismatic coach fluent in 5 languages. Instead, it's about a team built on modest budgets, bound together by belief, guided by a footballing mind that adds its own expertise, and led by a manager who finds distinction in the simplest of details. In May 2021, under the management of Antonio Conte, Inter embraced the Serie A title after a long 11-year wait. After a dark period dominated by Juventus, it was finally time for Inter fans to celebrate. But as you know, life often greets us with ironic surprises. Good news and bad news tend to come hand in hand. Just 3 weeks after the title celebration, the club officially announced that they had mutually parted ways with Conte. The root of the disagreement was the club's financial loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to budget cuts. This meant Inter would have to sell its star players and continue with a more modest squad, something Conte simply couldn't accept. Fans felt deep gratitude toward Conte, who had led them to the championship after more than a decade, but also anger and disappointment toward the club's management for pushing him out. Why downsize right after winning the league? The China-based Suning Group, which had taken over the club in 2016, had never fully won over the fans. And now, their first major success was already being squandered. Due to severe financial difficulties, Suning had taken out a high-interest loan of $275 million from the American asset management company Oaktree Capital Management, using Inter's shares as collateral. Over the next 3 years, the Chinese owners would be unable to repay the debt, and Inter's ownership would be forcibly transferred to the American firm. Long story short, they cost the club both money and prestige, but perhaps the most reasonable decision they made during their tenure was appointing Giuseppe "Beppe" Marotta as the club's CEO in 2018. Those who follow Italian football closely will already be familiar with the name. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Marotta the #1 figure in Italy's transfer market. Between 2010 and 2018, he held the same position at Juventus, where he was the mastermind behind the black and white's dominance in Italian football. During his time at Juve, Marotta built strong squads on modest budgets. He brought in players like Andrea Pirlo, Fernando Llorente, Kingsley Coman, Sami Khedira, and Dani Alves on free transfers. One of his most legendary moves came in 2012, when he signed Paul Pogba from Manchester United's youth academy for free, only to sell him back to United 4 years later for a staggering $105 million. During Marotta's tenure, Juventus won 7 Serie A titles and reached the Champions League final twice. After parting ways with the club in 2018, he signed with Inter just a few months later and became one of the architects behind their resurgence. It was also his decision to bring in Antonio Conte, his former colleague at Juventus, as Inter's head coach. Through key transfers like Romelu Lukaku, Christian Eriksen, Nicolo Barella, Stefano Sensi, and Achraf Hakimi, Marotta quickly made his impact felt in Milan as well. In Conte's second season, Inter finally clinched the league title. And if the club was now headed into a downsizing phase, there was no better man to oversee that transition than Marotta. Clearly, Italian football's sharpest mind found this challenge enticing. Despite financial constraints, he chose to stay. As expected, the summer of 2021 saw several big pieces fall into place. Inter sold their star striker, Romelu Lukaku, who had scored 24 goals on their path to the title, for $113 million to Chelsea. Achraf Hakimi, who had provided an extraordinary contribution of 7 goals and 10 assists from right back, was transferred to Paris Saint-Germain for $70 million. To replace Lukaku, Marotta targeted Edin Dzeko, and to fill the void left by Hakimi, he signed Denzel Dumfries, who had impressed with the Dutch national team at the European Championship. Another blow came unexpectedly, as Christian Eriksen had to leave the club due to unforeseen health issues. Marotta then made a move for a midfielder he had been monitoring for a long time, one who played for their eternal rivals. Hakan Çalhanoğlu had declined to renew his contract with Milan, and, as a free agent, signed with the Nerazzurri for a significant salary. Inter ended the transfer window with a profit of around $160 million. But the real critical issue, of course, was the appointment of the new manager. Simone Inzaghi, as a player, had always lived in the shadow of his older brother, Filippo. He spent nearly his entire career at Lazio and, shortly after retiring, began coaching in the club's youth setup. Over 6 years, he managed Lazio's U17 and U19 teams. Then, in April 2016, he was appointed interim head coach of the senior team after Stefano Pioli was sacked. After a decent finish to the final 7 games of the season, Inzaghi was handed a new contract in July, beginning a 5-year stretch of success with the Biancocelesti. During that time, he won the Coppa Italia once and the Italian Super Cup twice, consistently kept Lazio in European contention, and even led them to the Champions League. Wanting to work with a young manager eager to prove himself, Marotta saw in Inzaghi the same 3-5-2 system Conte had used and recognized a spark. That summer, he sat down with the promising coach and signed him to a 2-year deal. A new era was beginning at Inter, one filled with uncertainty and doubt. Despite losing key players, Inzaghi was inheriting a championship-winning team. There was no need to change the system, but soon enough, he would develop a very different version of Inter, compared to Conte's more counter-attacking, possession-conceding style. The 3-5-2 formation, often seen as outdated and rarely used in today's football, became Inzaghi's playground. Having never abandoned it since his Lazio days, he had modified the system with modern touches, making it uniquely his own. Lazio under Inzaghi was known for its offensive power, often ranking among the league's top-scoring teams. Under his guidance, Ciro Immobile scored 36 goals in one season and won the European Golden Boot. At times, it's hard to tell who's playing where in an Inzaghi team. You might see Bastoni bombing forward like a left-back, pushing Di Marco centrally, or a striker dropping deep to act as a fourth midfielder. Unlike the traditional, rigid Italian manager archetype, Inzaghi gives his players tactical freedom and flexibility. Of course, for such a complex system to work, you need intelligent and dedicated players. In Inzaghi's first season at Inter, his defensive trio on paper looked far more formidable than today. Skriniar, De Vrij, and Bastoni formed a rock-solid backline. In midfield, the trio was perfectly balanced. Brozovic played the regista role, dictating tempo and controlling the ball in front of the defense. Barella, with boundless energy, covered every blade of grass. And then there was the often underappreciated Turkish midfielder. Humans have survived for centuries, not because of physical power or speed, but through intelligence and adaptability. If we hadn't discovered fire, we'd have frozen. Without shelter, we'd have perished in storms. And just like in life, in football too, only the adaptable survive. Hakan Çalhanoğlu has played in various systems, positions, and roles throughout his career. Despite not being the most athletic player, his football IQ has allowed him to excel at whatever job he's been given. Once an attacking midfielder at Milan, he now masterfully connects play in Inter's midfield trio. Inter's strike force, Martinez and Dzeko, weren't traditional poachers either. They dropped deep, linked up play, and made life easier for Inzaghi. On the wings, dynamic fullbacks like Denzel Dumfries and Ivan Perisic, with their ability to attack and contribute goals, were essential assets. As always, Inzaghi built a fluid attacking team in his first season. Inter became the highest-scoring team in the league, but lost the title by just 2 points, to bitter rivals Milan. Marotta then pulled off another major Bosman signing by bringing in Andre Onana from Ajax. While today's performances might not fully reflect it, just a few years ago, the Cameroonian was one of the most promising modern goalkeepers in Europe, known for both his shot-stopping and footwork. His later $50 million move to Manchester United proved just that. Another major summer move was the return of Romelu Lukaku, who had struggled to find joy at Chelsea and rejoined on loan. Inzaghi also brought in his former Lazio student Francesco Acerbi, while Henrik Mkhitaryan, out of contract at Roma, was signed to provide depth. Though these two veteran players, aged 35 and 33, may not have made headlines like Onana or Lukaku, Inzaghi swiftly integrated them into his starting lineup, extracting every bit of value. With De Vrij's inconsistent form and Skriniar unwilling to extend his contract, the once great defensive trio was broken up. Inzaghi now operated with a more humble back three of Darmian, Acerbi, and Bastoni. With Perisic gone, academy product Federico Di Marco stepped up on the left wing. Mkhitaryan slotted into midfield, and Lukaku provided rotation up front. There would be no title race in Serie A that season. Spalletti's Napoli stole the show, ending their 33-year wait for a Scudetto in truly epic fashion. But unlike the Conte era, Inzaghi's Inter managed to become a real force in the Champions League for the first time in many years. Since winning the trophy with Jose Mourinho in 2010, the Nerazzurri had only once reached the quarterfinals of the competition. But now, they were slowly rekindling the excitement they had long forgotten. That season, many said Inter were lucky with their draws. However, what is often overlooked is that they had advanced from a group of death that included Bayern Munich and Barcelona. They then knocked out Porto in the round of 16, Benfica in the quarterfinals, and arch-rivals AC Milan in the semis, thrilling their fans along the way. The Ataturk Olympic Stadium in Istanbul once again hosted an Italian-English final, 18 years after the legendary 2005 showdown. We've got plenty more stories like this to tell. If you're enjoying it so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to support us, because that's our greatest motivation to keep telling new stories. The truth is, Inter weren't given much of a chance against Pep Guardiola's machine. But for a team that was written off, they gave Manchester City a real fight. Perhaps if Edin Dzeko had finished the match instead of starting it, things might have ended differently. Instead, it was Lukaku who came on and missed chances that had fans tearing their hair out, perhaps marking the end of his relationship with the club. Once again, Istanbul proved lucky for the English. Inzaghi's team left the final defeated, but proud. And those who chalked Inter's run-up to luck would have to admit they were wrong within 2 years. After the Champions League final, Marotta made a few, but highly important, changes to the squad. With Onana's profitable sale to Manchester United, the club needed a reliable replacement in goal. That's when Marotta played his classic bargain transfer card. The previous season, Bayern Munich had signed Jan Sommer due to Manuel Neuer's long-term injury. But with Neuer's recovery, Sommer had become surplus to requirements. Marotta seized the opportunity and signed the Swiss keeper for a modest fee. Sommer has always been undervalued, perhaps because, at 1.83 mem, he's considered short for a goalkeeper. But on his day, Jan Sommer can transform into one of the world's best. In fact, he still holds the record for most saves in a single match. 19. Long story short, Marotta had secured the best goalkeeper available for $7 million. With the departures of Dzeko and Lukaku, Inter were suddenly short of strikers. But once again, Marotta answered with one of his signature Bosman transfers. Today worth nearly $75 million, Marcus Thuram was brought in for free. With further additions like Aslani, Bisek, Fratzi, and Arnautovic, the rotation was strengthened too. Marotta had once again provided his manager with a balanced squad at a low cost. On the other hand, there was a big question mark over how they would cope with Brozovic's departure. Any other manager would have demanded an immediate replacement for such a key player, especially someone who played a pivotal role in the system. Conte? He would have insisted on a signing, even clashing with the board if needed. But Inzaghi had something else in mind. The previous season, he had occasionally used his versatile number 20 in Brozovic's role with satisfying results. So, Inzaghi made Çalhanoğlu his new, full-time, deep-lying playmaker, and in doing so, launched him into the prime of his career. For Inzaghi, the time had come to add the title of champion to his name. He extended his contract in September 2023 and got to work. This time, Inter didn't allow a title race to even begin. They once again finished as Serie A's top-scoring team and won the league in spectacular fashion, losing only 2 matches over 38 games. By season's end, they had a staggering 19-point lead over second-place AC Milan. In the Champions League, they were drawn against a team that resembled them in many ways, a team nobody wanted to face, Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid. The round of 16 clash was a brutal battle. Inter held the advantage until the 87th minute of the second leg, but they couldn't hold on for 3 more minutes. Atletico leveled the tie and eliminated Inter on penalties. Thankfully, they had the Scudetto as a magnificent consolation, and they'd have another shot at the Champions League the following year. This team wasn't going to lose motivation, because as much as Inzaghi believed in his players, they believed in him just as strongly. The players often speak about being inspired by his humility. He gave us freedom and reminded us football is still a game, said Bastoni. I've worked under Gasperini and Conte. They're always on the pitch. But Inzaghi also cares about your human side. That helps you stay calm in key moments. Lautaro Martinez added, "People really underestimate his coaching ability. Inzaghi's secret is that he still thinks like a footballer. That's why he understands us so well and sees the game from our perspective. For me, that's a blessing because he was a striker. He knows how to send me onto the pitch with peace of mind and a smile on my face. Inzaghi may not have the charisma of Don Carlo or the fierce ambition of Antonio Conte. Or maybe because he only speaks Italian. He simply hasn't been able to share his story with the world properly. But what makes him special lies in his simplicity. He cares only about coaching and fulfilling a childhood dream." In the 2024-25 season, the team that left its mark on the new Champions League format right from the group stage was undoubtedly Simone Inzaghi's Inter. In the newly expanded 8-game group phase, they conceded just 1 goal and lost only once, away to Leverkusen. In the round of 16, they comfortably beat Feyenoord across 2 legs. But when the quarterfinal draw matched them with Bayern Munich, most believed Inter's journey had reached its end. Bayern, with their consistently elite squad, were natural favorites in this tournament. Yet the Italians stunned them in Germany with a last-minute winner from Fratesi. A 2-2 draw at San Siro meant Inter were officially one of the top 4 teams in Europe. Their final obstacle en route to the showpiece was a dazzling Barcelona side coached by Hansi Flick. Before the tie, Inzaghi said, "We respect Barcelona, but we have no reason to fear them." And he meant it. Every second of that tie, Inter believed they could beat their high-scoring opponents. In 2 matches filled with goals and drama, Inzaghi's side never surrendered. They earned their reward, a place in the final. In one of the most miraculous and unforgettable matchups in recent memory, they forced extra time with a late equalizer from Iturbi, scored with his weaker foot, and sealed the deal with a strike from super sub Fratesi, a center-back launching a last-minute counter-attack inside the opponent's box? Really? Let's not call that luck. In my opinion, Bayern and Barcelona were 2 of the best teams in Europe this season, said Inzaghi. I'm so proud to be their coach. My players gave everything they had. We should savor every moment of this. Simone Inzaghi is now finishing his 4th year at Inter. And if things go his way, he might just end the season with both the Serie A and Champions League titles, done entirely in his own style. At a club that has had to sell key players almost every year just to stay afloat, he achieved this with a modest squad, a so-called outdated system, and without spending hundreds of millions. Simone is no longer just the less talented little brother of Super Pippo. He's the man who brought Inter back to the summit of Europe.